Hello, and welcome to my first video on volumetric drawing or planar analysis. You can call it a number of different things, but what it is a drawing technique where you break down your subject into simpler geometric forms, and this serves a lot of different purposes. Uh, I think this is one of the most important drawing exercises you can do. And to underscore that, I'm going to give you a quick tour of my sketchbook. This is one that I finished earlier this year. I think I finished it around the spring equinox. So we're going to look at a few drawings from beginning from last summer into into the fall. We'll probably go about that far. So as you can see in sort of this first page, I'll just start flipping through here. In a lot of these drawings, I'm breaking down the shapes of my subject, like this raven, into these different planes, like complex polygons. So if you think of like maybe early PlayStation video games or Nintendo 64, that type of graphic resolution. And as I said, this has a lot of benefits. So it allows you to begin to visualize very complex structures. So this is a drawing of a sculpture of by Bernini of Louis the 14th there. And so you can see it's very fancy hair, very fancy flowing drapery around him. And so being able to visualize, the subject as these simple planes makes it much easier to go back in later and begin to add other parts to the drawing, like value or texture, like a cloth texture or something. So it's very a good way to begin to build up your subject. If you have any interest in doing drapery, actually drapery is a great way to get better at this as well. Drapery can be incredibly complex to draw. But this technique really lends itself to it. So as you can see, some of these drawings are in different stages of resolution. Like here, this little undead creature, I've begun to add in some of the value in the body, but you can still kind of see how I've been building up that value on top of this planar structure. Um, Very clear here in my mind flayer. So one of the other benefits of working in this way is that it's incredibly beneficial if you want to invent scenes. So if you want to come up with like a vampire on your own, this is a great way for you to again first start with a very sort of simple representation in your head, composed of like rectangles and prisms, and then you can kind of move the sculpture. You can move the subject around in your mind to find a very dynamic pose. And then so you're able to have these very dynamic poses, and then from these simple shapes you build into more complex shapes. So you can get these drawings, with a great amount of resolution and detail, and they're also doing these very interesting things. So here is a pretty good example of two stages of this process. Let's see, I'll tilt this a little bit here. So here we have this sort of planar volumetric drawing of a gremlin. And so you can see how I've simplified, the different planes of the face into these different shapes. So the next step there would be, you know, again, as I was saying, coming in to add value, adding shadows or visual texture here, like this, you know, this kind of wrought metal nose piece on this Skeksis. So, so as you're coming in and adding in your value, you know, let's look at this portion right here of this cheek, the very prominent cheekbone, and so the plane is kind of coming down like this. And what I'm doing to help emphasize that is when I'm coming in with my value, my marks are going in that dominant direction of the plane. So to help emphasize, you know, how this object exists within space. It's a three-dimensional object existing in a three-dimensional space. So let's see, I'll tilt the camera back up and we'll go through these some more. So you can see just every page. This is primarily what I do in my sketchbook. And you know, it's important to set aside some time each day to draw. It's, you know, it's a daily practice. You know, and even like a little silly sketch like this, like these over here. You know, just something to kind of keep your mind and your hand moving at the same time. So same direction. So some of these we're going to get to now are from Inktober, which is one of my favorite drawing challenges. So, you know, I'm just talking about your daily practice. Inktober is a great challenge in the month of October. On Instagram, you do a drawing each day based on certain prompts. And so it's fun. You share them. Yeah, I mean, most people know what an Instagram challenge is. So here's a great example. In this page, I think there's a few good examples of this type of planar drawing. So you can see how here in this tree witch, like creatures, monsters are great for this, especially Frankenstein's monster here, because their features are so pronounced. And that's sort of like what makes them a little monstrous too, is that they have these very exaggerated features. And so you can see here how I've kind of like, this is more or less kind of a rectangle that comes up, out, down. So drawing trees as well. So as you can see here, much easier when you can begin to visualize them, you know, as these different cylinders or prisms. So we'll kind of skip through some more of these. I want to get to the owls because that is going to be sort of the last point that I touch on. Some of these drawings or some of these sketches that you're seeing here were or later realized as drawings. So I'll go back and maybe post one or two of these drawings after this video for people to look at. So so we can see lots of owls here, birds. Birds in particular, because of the arrangement of their feathers, the complexity of their feathers, are great subjects for this, because it's really easy to get confused when you're drawing, you know, trying to communicate, you know, like 500 feathers, and you know, on top of that they might have, you know, texture or pattern or camouflage on top of them. So owls in particular are something that I really enjoy drawing. So you've probably noticed that there are a lot of them here. Scops owls, great horned owls. So what I think so what I'll do is we'll just look at sort of this picture of an owl here, for reference, and then we'll look at, you know, these here as well. So owls have they're stealth hunters, and their plumage is meant to break up their form. That's camouflage. So they're meant to blend in with their surroundings. So that can make them exceptionally difficult to draw, because not only do you have this complex feather structure, um, but then you have this coloration on top of it, meant to confuse the eye. So being able to first visualize your subject, I'll move this up a little bit. Being able to first visualize your subject as these more simplified planes makes it significantly easier to come back in and draw the texture uh, correctly, to correctly communicate that. Because you can just take this texture, you can sort of map it over this 3D model that you've made. So that's what I've got to say about volumetric drawing, planar analysis. So it's a really vital exercise, and I encourage people to do it as much as possible. And in the next video, I'll actually do some drawing instead of just looking at my sketchbook.